1-year anniversary. As of the day that this is being uploaded, it will have been 1 year that I've been doing deduction content on YouTube, and some of you have been here from the very beginning, and I'm beyond grateful to have such support on the channel for over a year. As of the time I'm recording this a couple days in advance, I have 809 subscribers. We are close to the 1,000 milestone. I'm not sure what that means, but it'll be cool. I have a lot of content that I've been preparing for March. February was a slow upload month. It was a busy month all month. I didn't get a lot of uploads up in February, but I had a lot of it saved. I saved a lot of work that I was doing in February so that I could post hopefully a lot in March. But I want to thank all of my subscribers, anyone who watches this, for the support. The deduction community is a great community. There's some drama in the community, but there's a lot of healthy, nurturing support, and I want to thank you all for that. That being said, I left several chances for question and answer to be submitted to me over the last month or two, for me to answer in this video. So we'll go ahead and get on to the question and answers now. The first question comes from Jack Miller, and he asks, how would you store things you learned about body language and deduction specifically in your mind palace? So what kind of room, what kind of peg, how exactly, as it isn't a list or something similar. Okay, so to answer that question, the pegs specifically don't matter when you're trying to memorize things in your mind palace. As long as you have your mind palace set up in a way that is repetitive, that you go through the same pattern every time you go through your mind palace. And I plan on doing a video about my mind palace and different memory tricks, different memory things that I use, and I'm going to do it in a visual way so that you guys can see what my mind palace looks like, and etc. But as long as you have it set up in a pattern that you can go through and access the files systematically, the pegs themselves don't matter, as long as they're big and they're easy to remember. As for putting the information into the mind palace, what matters there is that you want to file it and store it in a way that you encode it in a specific way. So specifically, I don't like to memorize specific sets of information, because that only helps you in specific situations. But if you remember the principles, which is what I would do, remember the principles behind what you're trying to learn, and then encode that in a specific way. So maybe think of something similar to like encoding numbers. So for me, 1 is a pencil because it looks like a 1. 2 is a gooseneck because it looks like a 2 kind of. 0 is a donut, etc., etc. You can move on through the list. You can come up with ways to encode information like that, as long as you figure out the principles that you're trying to apply, that you're trying to memorize. You memorize the principle, and you encode the information related to that principle. This one's a pretty common question. Jam Ninja asks, how did you get started in deduction? So how did I get started in deduction? Pretty common question. I was probably about 13 when I saw the Young Sherlock Holmes movie. It's 1970s movie. Really good one. I do suggest that one. I like that one. Anyway, it's kind of the one that introduced me to the concept of deduction and how to use it, and I realized, ironically enough, in that movie, while watching that movie, that it's a skill that can be learned. It can be used, because it seemed realistic to me, even though some of the deductions in that movie are kind of embellished. But that's kind of the one that got me started into thinking about deduction. My father was a deductionist before me, so I kind of unknowingly was always doing it to some degree because of him. And then I suppose 13 is when I started. I started out I was a fiction writer in high school and stuff like that. And I would write, one of the characters that I wrote was a detective. He used methods very similar to Sherlock Holmes, and that kind of, much like Arthur Conan Doyle, I got so good at writing it that it kind of applied to myself. And then I had a couple of cases. I've told the stories on in the Deduction Stories series, which you can find a playlist for that on my channel. A couple of specific stories, specific events, taught me that deduction was a skill worth having. It was a skill that I can use in my life, and it, at least on 2 occasions, saved someone's life when I used it. So I benefited others by using it, and I've been training pretty much consistently since then. I've had a couple of periods where I've been on and off with deduction because of events in my life, but for the most part, that's how I got started. Alexandra, always nice to have your comments, by the way. She asks, what can you deduce from a subject's eye pupils? What can you deduce from a woman's nail polish? Not too relevant. Can you speak any foreign languages? And you used to mention writing a book about the deduction of art. How is this going? So I'll answer those systematically. From a subject's pupils, I can usually deduce their intentions, their motives. A lot of times their eyes are where you will find micro-expressions, and you have to be careful when studying micro-expressions. You have to do a specific study in these. It's the only way to understand them well. But through the micro-expressions, you can often determine motive and desire from the eyes. The thing about pupil dilation, that is totally true. You can determine attraction through the pupil dilation, but you have to keep in mind that also has to do with light. So that's circumstantial. Sometimes you can determine when someone's wearing eye contacts. I forget exactly 100% how, but I think it has to do with like a layering effect, that there's kind of a layering effect on the pupil. I'm not 100% sure on that. You'll have to do your own research, and I'm going to do research on this afterwards as well, because I'm not 100% sure on that fact. But I have, in the past, been able to determine eye contacts and things like that because of something I saw in the eyes. So those are what you can determine from eye contact, or the pupils in the eyes. From a woman's nail polish, you can determine a couple of things. If they do physical work or not. If it's strenuous work, they're not going to wear a lot of nail polish all the time. If they do wear nail polish and do physical work, you'll either see chips in the nails, or they have some sort of a chip nail protection. I can't remember what it's called, but there is like a nail polish that is for chip resistant stuff. Then of course there's the fake nails, which are disgusting in my opinion, but all of those things can tell you things about the wearer, and then you can determine through, if you look at the nail polish where it's wearing off, if it, I'm trying to see here, if it looks like it's peeling this way, upwards, it means that someone's been picking it off themselves. And if you see it kind of peeling off this way, it means they've slammed their nail or their hand into something and it peeled it off going downwards. So that can tell you something about the person and how the nail polish has been rubbed off. Let's see. Next question was, do I speak any languages? Or any other languages besides English? Of course I speak English sometimes. My father lived in Mexico, South America, for several years. So he's a fluent Spanish speaker, and I've picked up a lot of Spanish from him. Not enough that I'm fluent myself, but I can understand and I can follow along with conversations. And then speak some. And then besides that, I've been learning French. After I learned French, I have an interest in learning German, Russian, so Spanish, German, and Russian. Spanish, French, German, and Russian are all 4 languages that I know a little bit about. I'm not fluent in any of them yet. I plan on becoming fluent in them though. I love Asian languages, so Taiwanese, Chinese, Japanese, Korean. I love those languages. I would probably never learn them because they're considerably different from the vocabulary and the phonics that you use in things like French, German, Russian, English. So just to keep it simple on myself, I would probably never learn those languages, but I love they're almost artistic in a way, so I like them for that reason. And as for the book, I'm actually still writing it. I have it right here. It's not very far along, but I am writing it. I didn't forget about it. The reason it's taking so long to get anywhere with that is because there's just a lot of research that has to be done. Very, 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 very few people have done anything similar to what I'm doing. I have 2 books right here and then 1 more book over in the hallway in my library. Those are like the only 3 books that I've been able to find that have anything remotely to do with the subject that we're talking about. So this one has to do with the psychology of art. This one has to do with culture and personality. I'll pull them out right now. Kind of being used as bookends. This one is the psychology of art. It's a Russian, so it doesn't translate perfectly, but that's the book. And it's a lot of research, and you have to understand a lot of it. This one is culture and personality. It has to do with art a little bit, though. And then I have visual intelligence, which I haven't started reading yet. Mostly because I'm currently trying to finish what everybody is saying. Before I move on to those. So once I finish what everybody is saying, I will continue my personal research on the study of art and deduction. My cards fell over. So that's what's keeping me from that study at the moment. I haven't forgotten about it. I have several notes on my computer about the subject, but what slows me down mostly is the fact that it's just a ton of research before I can do anything. If I want to, because I'm not just making it up as I go along, I have to study it first before I can safely be willing to write anything about the subject. What I want to do is when I get it going, when I get the study going more frequently, when I have something to share on it, I will put it up on that blog that I don't use anymore. And then that's where I'll share most of the information until I actually get it bound and written as a book and I can distribute it. But as I make studies about it, I'll update the post there about it. And then I might put it up on the Deductionist group chat too. Information that I study there. I've learned a lot and I've used it before. You can see in my Deduction of Art series, it's only 3 videos long, but there's a lot that you can learn from art and psychology, and then combining those 2 studies into deduction. But no, I haven't forgotten about that book. I'm still writing it. It's going to take a long time before it comes to fruition, just because I have to study so much information, and I have to, what I have to do is that there is a lot of information out there about this kind of stuff, but some of it's just bogus, and I have to figure out which ones are legitimate, and then what studies are just ridiculous and you can't trust them, and I have to go through that myself and figure out what I want to save, what I want to keep, what I want to use, and then what needs to be discarded. And it's a lot. It's a lot to do. Word Marin, I hope I'm saying that right, says, good job with this channel. I want to ask you something if you don't mind. How can I spot a gay or bisexual person? And also, deduction has become your second nature. I imagine you've studied for years. Okay, this one I'll tackle the second part first. Yes, I have studied for a total of, I think I'm going on 8 years now. So I have studied for quite a while. There's still deductionists out there who can run circles around me, though. So, but thank you for your kind words. As for the first part, keeping in mind this is just pure observation. This is not discrimination or anything like that. This is what I have observed, what I have proven in my use of deduction over the past few years. Things that you want to look for if you're determining the sexuality of someone. And again, you have to just bear in mind that a lot of this is going to be circumstantial. You have to find multiple pieces of evidence to support what you're saying here. For the most part, though, you're going to be looking for someone who is liberal. You'll almost never find a conservative person who is also homosexual or bisexual. So someone who's liberal is one thing you'll be looking for. You'll be looking for someone who is probably outside the realm of, I don't want to say social norms, but they'll be more non-traditionalist in hobbies and things like that. They'll be those sort of things. They'll also be on the opinionated side, not in a pompous way, but they will have their own opinions about things. Then again, you can also check for attraction cues. This again goes into the nonverbals, where their eyes go, where their body language goes. The attraction cues will be the same whether you're homosexual, bisexual, straight, whatever. These are all going to be the same. So a man's attraction cues are going to be the same whether he's looking at a woman or a man. So that goes for pupil dilation, foot movements. All of the nonverbals will be the same. You just have to learn how to read those. And again, that requires a whole study about nonverbal communication. So before you make any judgments on this, make sure you don't just look. You're not just looking for one thing. You're looking for multiple subjects, multiple points. You also want to look for clothing choices. Those are going to be helpful. I have found personally that people who make alternative lifestyle choices, not just homosexuals, but hipsters, etc., 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 whatever, they like to break the social structures and things like that, in the sense that, like, commonly it's accepted that your watch is going to be on your left wrist if you're right-handed. But they like to change that. Like, they like to do the opposite. And it's not just for sexuality, it's just in general. People on that... I'm not sure what the word for that is, but people who break that structure, like hipsters, they're outside of the social norms, will do that. They will intentionally put their watch on the wrist that's not commonly accepted. They'll intentionally do the non-commonly accepted things. So those are something you can keep an eye out for. But again, always err on the side of caution with that topic. Edward again asks about the homosexual, so I'll skip that one since I already answered it. And then, what can I deduce from someone's tattoo? What books do I recommend for beginners? Does deductive reasoning skills help you to impress girls? How can I tell if someone is married in a relationship besides wedding ring? And then he goes on, respect you very much for your efforts to share content. I'm very grateful for what you've done so far with this channel. Keep up the good work. Okay, thank you again, Edward, for your support. So starting off, first question was about what can you use from someone's tattoo? Things that I would personally look for, like I said, I've done an in-depth study about art. So one of the first things I think of is, okay, what is the artistic side of this tattoo telling me? So that would be one of the first things I look for. But then there's also the color of the tattoo, the fading of the tattoo, which can kind of tell you the age of the tattoo. The tattoo, if it's like on an arm, if it's put down in a way that's facing other people, basically, so holding your arm out like this, if it's facing someone who would be looking at you, that means that the tattoo is designed so that others can see it easily. And then if the tattoo is printed in a way that it's facing the wearer, that can mean that it's some kind of a reminder to the wearer, perhaps a rite of passage or something that he's proud of in himself, but he's not necessarily wanting to flaunt it for others. It's just a reminder to himself. So those are all things that you'll remember that you can look at, that you can deduce from tattoos. Another thing that you can look for is, does it look like the tattoo did he attempt to remove the tattoo at some point? Did the tattoo removal treatment fail? Those you can look at through fading. It can look like it's been kind of washed away. There's some images that you can search for on tattoo removal. And I might do a video about tattoo removal too. I did a study on tattoo removal. I might put that in a tip video. I think that would be the main things that you would look at for someone who is wearing a tattoo. It can also tell you interests, much like a t-shirt can tell you what a person is interested in, personality, things like that. So the main thing that you'd want to look for, though, is first off, try to determine what the tattoo, why it's there, what it means to the person, and then from there you can kind of make other observations about it. The next question that you had was about what books I would suggest reading. I just did a book review last month on the book by Hannah Rogers. So you can look at that to see if that's one that you would decide to read. Besides that, definitely pick up monographs. Mastermind by Maria Konnikova. Those two books always are a must for a deductionist. A good introductory book is the Deduction Guide by Louise Blackwell. I lent it out to a friend right now, so I don't personally have that copy on me. But it is definitely one that I would suggest for beginners, and then you go on to maybe Mastermind by Maria Konnikova, then Monographs by Ben Cardall, and then, like I said, I have What Everybody Is Saying by Joe Navarro. That is specifically for nonverbals, body language, those sort of things. Those would be... I'm sorry about that. It's family. Those are the books that I would recommend. And then it's just a matter of what specific things you want to learn about. If you want to learn about nonverbals, you go to the What Everybody Is Saying by Joe Navarro. If you want to learn about art, if you want to learn about cigarettes, tea, coffee, just depending on the specific studies that you're wanting to do. Once you have the basics of deduction down, and you're applying that to your life, then you go on to more specific studies to add to your knowledge base. Has deduction helped me impress girls? I cannot think of a time when I've actually just impressed girls with deduction. No, it doesn't really help. You're more likely to get slapped if you make certain comments about a woman. And then how can you determine... Oh, can you determine if someone's married besides the wedding ring? Yes, body language is the other main factor that you'll find there. I would call... A lot of times I'll make deductions about people and I'll say that they're married, when in reality I basically just mean common law marriage. That's essentially the only way that you can really determine that. I mean, if they're common law marriage, that's close enough. That's where you're going to get the keys, or the traits, the things to observe. But I would look for body language, how close they stand to each other, things like that. Also, look for if one of them is following the other more or less, in a sense that they're following not demands or orders or anything like that, but if they're letting one take the lead, basically, that can be a clue. A lot of times I'll see older couples and it kind of looks like the woman dressed the man. That's oftentimes a clue that they're married. I find that always amusing when an older couple comes into a restaurant and it looks like the wife dressed the husband. But those are a few things that you would look for, making deductions about a couple. That is all of the questions I have for this video, and it actually became quite the long video. Thank you again, everybody, for your support. Thank you for all the questions. I look forward to another strong year of deduction with you guys. And we're coming up close on that 1,000 mark again, so just keep it up. Thanks for your support, and keep an eye out for future content, because I've got some good stuff in the works. So thank you and have a nice day.